So I'm really pleased to kick off the autumn season, the 2024 season of the Wednesday webinars. Today I'm joined by the lead reviewer of the Policing Productivity Review, Alan Pughsley QPM, who's been supported by a team comprising of serving and former officers, police staff and other subject matter experts. So Alan, thanks so much for choosing and coming across with us today. Perhaps you can start off by explaining what the Policing Productivity Review is and how you and your team have approached this challenge over the last couple of years.
Thanks, David, and colleagues. Nice to be here. So, the Productivity Review was commissioned to us by the Home Secretary in the summer of 2022, and importantly, I guess, against the backdrop of a number of strategic and key issues. One being the 20,000 extra police officers that were being delivered and recruited by policing across England and Wales. Significant challenges into trust and confidence into policing at the time, and certainly greater expectations from the public with regard to what policing would deliver. The initial commission was 12 months. It was a 12-month commission to look across policing in England and Wales and see whether or not they could improve from a productive point of view. We delivered our report within 12 months as promised, 26 recommendations. They equated to, give or take, 38 million hours that could be better spent in policing. And as a direct result of those findings, we were commissioned for a further 12 months. So we have now come into the end of the 24-month, 2-year period, where we will finalise and deliver our report number 3 to the Home Secretary and Policing Minister. And in report 1, I guess some of the headlines that we looked at were barriers to productivity in policing, hugely important to us. That included things like mental health, Home Office counting rules, and maybe the criminal justice system. And we designed at a very early stage, and still to be built upon from a technological point of view, a process called the model process, which in my experience of 40 years as a police officer, for the first time in a very simple way, good for me, by the way, brought together a marriage of cost and performance in a really simple, pragmatic way that allowed chiefs and others to understand the position of their force and make informed decisions to improve productivity and performance.
Thanks, Alan. And one of the things I will point out, this is the first of 2-part webinar. There's an awful lot to cover over the next couple of weeks. So we will pop your questions in. Some of them we might signpost you to next week, etc. But some we will bring in. Alan, I think one of the first things we have to come back to is why does policing productivity actually matter? And what can you explain what that actually means in terms of getting the best possible for policing?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's always mattered, but I think today, and maybe in the next month or so with the budget to come, it's going to become even more important. What productivity means, I think, in policing, but probably in every organisation, but let's focus on policing. It is about getting the very best service, outcome from the resources you have available. That is what productivity means in policing. And you can make that then as broad as you want to. So what we found with our recommendations, and they can all be implemented, they're all tangible, they're all deliverable, and we suggest they can be delivered over a 5-year period. They lead to the following: more police officers on the street, more police officers responding to incidents, and more police officers and staff, of course, investigating crime. All of those can be achieved. And they all lead to, do they not, I guess, better outcomes and better service to the public. So times are going to be really tough for public services. They have been for some time, but I think they're not going to get too much easier in the next 3, maybe 5, maybe 10 years. So I repeat myself about getting the very best product and productivity about the resources in the widest context that forces currently have.
And I think the better outcomes for the public link directly into the conversation we're having about the trust and confidence in police, don't they? It's a really key part of how we're doing this work. Alan, how did you approach the review? Because policing is a very complex and broad set of subjects. So how did you approach this?
Yeah, again, you're right. It's so broad, and we had, I repeat, initially a 12-month period. So number one, we were very strong on, Steve House and I, at a very early stage, on the independence of the review. We had to have the ability to go and look across 43 forces, which we did. We had to have the ability to be able to find and tell and record and present difficult messages, if that's what we found. And some of those, of course, we did. And we found some brilliant work going out, as you would expect, across police in England and Wales. And of course, we reported on that as well. So the approach was to create a team, and that was one of the blessings we had. I still have and did have a phenomenal and fantastic team to do the work, mixed of serving officers, serving staff, retired officers, retired staff, and people from the wider sector and indeed outside of the sector, the Treasury being an example. It had to be core and have relevance. So we visited on many occasions all the forces around England and Wales. And as I said, we also were not arrogant enough to think that policing had all of the answers. We went externally, health, education, charities, and the public sector to see what else was going on successfully in the world of productivity. And all of that led to 26 recommendations in Report 1. They are, by the way, a public document that everybody can see. They were fully accepted by the government at the time. And as I say, we're now in a transition stage leading to hopefully the implementation of those recommendations for the benefit of policing and ultimately the benefit of the public that we serve.
And I think one of the things that when I read the report that's out there already, and we'll talk about how you access the reports over the next couple of weeks, importantly, one element, of course, is technology. And we, with the police digital service hosting the Wednesday webinars deliberately, and it's great we're able to use this as a channel to communicate this. So where did the police use of technology fit into the review?
So right at the heart of review and Report 1, and by the way, Report 2, and continues into Report 3. So in the first one, whilst we looked at barriers, and some of those I mentioned were mental health and Home Office counting rules, all of which have been changed and implemented already, which is maybe a difference with many reviews. Some of the reviews findings are already having a positive impact on the street for the public. What we found with technology was it was, and still is, the key enabler alongside the people to change innovation, change creativity and productivity to best effect. So we had it as one of our key strands. We had it to go and find how forces were using technology to great effect, and to find if there were any barriers to making sure that it could be consistently applied across UK policing. So we found really good examples of automation and robotics, turning audio product and other product into statements and or paperwork for case papers and such like. We found chatbots to triage calls in control rooms and such like that were working incredibly well. And we found, and very importantly, I said criminal justice was one of our barriers. We found some really good processes of redacting documentation for and presentation to whether it be the CPS and court in due course. Much of our findings in Report 1 around technology, I am certain, led to the government then at the time, as I say, agreeing all the recommendations and finding with Treasury over £230 million to go into policing, directly linked to improving productivity, with a strong, incredibly strong link and arm to using technology to do that. The second report, which is currently with Chief Constables, only a week or 2 or 3 ago, and with government, focused on AI and, of course, technology and the obvious link to that. And the 38 million hours, David, became over 60. And most of those million hours of time back into policing in report number 2 come from technology and AI.
So technology is obviously a very key enabler, and that's the language we use quite often in the police digital service and these Wednesday webinars. So what are the key findings, particularly relating to technology?
Well, the first one, not surprising, but disappointing, I suppose. And I think about my 9 years as a chief, it was 96 or 97%, give or take, of science and policing's time, maintenance, money goes to maintenance of existing technology. So that leaves you a tiny percentage, doesn't it, of looking forward around innovation and creativity. And that's where I think a slight, if not a major change in culture needs to happen. But it also needs to be a change in leadership to enable forces to be able to do this. So funding and visible leadership from government is key, and we recommended that in report 1, so that forces could adopt new technology, not be risk averse, be creative, be bold, and be brave, and streamlining processes, and therefore freeing up, of course, officer time. AI should be expanded. It's already being used in policing. Facial recognition's a good example. But around trust and confidence there, we believe and recorded that clear governance, monitoring, good frameworks and training are key, so the public and the users get more trust and confidence in things like facial recognition. And as I've said, the AI piece, it brought our findings to over 60 million hours, but breaking it down, I think the AI piece on its own was about 21 million hours worth of time. So it's the one to go forward. It's the one that people worry a little bit about, maybe a lot about, but good governance, good trust, good confidence, good evidence of success will, I think, convince everybody to do it in the right way.
And I think for me, the technology and the AI in particular, it's not just about saving time, but also improving the quality of the service and the decision making that we make, and the benefits of that are potentially absolutely huge, aren't they, as we go forward? There's some
Yeah,
questions come.
sorry,
Go on, Alan.
yes. No, David, look, absolutely yes. Very current. Let me name drop somebody just for one moment. Hertfordshire Chief Constable Charlie Hall. I've known Charlie for a long time, respect him, think he's one of the best chiefs out there. He phoned me up and said, "We've got a bit of AI working and it gives you a wow moment." And it's at exactly the bit that you just talked about, accuracy. In 30 seconds, it turns audio product into a statement that is better, believe it or not, than any officer probably could write. That's how good it is, and they're using it in Hertfordshire as we speak.
And I think dozens of examples out there that's really good. We are getting questions coming in, and we'll pop them to you in a little while, Alan. But perhaps you could explain about the second phase and what the focus of that's going to be as we move forward.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we had 4 new topics as a result of the success of Report 1 that were requested again by the Home Secretary and the Policing Minister. AI, I've just mentioned, was one of the key ones. The other 3 that we looked at were custody and whether custody could be more productively, therefore people be spending time in custody, and the officers and police staff dealing with them. The workforce, whether or not we found some good, interesting findings about sickness in report 1, and therefore restricted duties and workforce deployment was within report number 2 for us to build on initial findings, and missing persons in the same way that mental health in report 1 was told and asked of us, is it having a detrimental impact on policing time? Missing persons, we were asked similarly. So they were the 4 areas that report 2 focused on.
That's fantastic. And the third phase, I know we're going to be talking a bit more about this later. What will that be looking at?
So I think very current in current context, poor language by me. 3 areas. 1, neighbourhood policing models, what that looks like across England and Wales, and is there a perfect model, but what should it look like to build trust and confidence again in our local communities, particularly and how it can be delivered in a productive way. Investigation, how well policing investigates crime, and again how it can improve its current delivery in that space. And the third one, a lot of chiefs asked us to look at this, was around regulatory frameworks and accreditation impacting on policing, and whether or not the demand on policing was maybe at a platinum level, impacting on time and resource, when maybe a good gold level was acceptable, whether it be in the court of law, of course, or indeed any other area of policing.
That's linked to that is one of the questions that's coming from the chat already is, will there be a national AI strategy for policing published that you're aware of? I know there's bits of work going on in this space, isn't there?
There is work going on in this space. I believe the answer to that is yes. I'm very pleased, and we work very closely with, Jeremy Vaughan, Chief in South Wales, is now leading a new Science and Technology Committee board at a national level, and that is exactly the sort of area of work that committee, that board will do, and therefore give. I'm sure the question is about national consistency, and that is required and needed.
I never want to miss an opportunity. We've got a presentation at the Emergency Services and Emergency Technology Show next week on the Thursday, where one of our colleagues from Police Digital Service will be talking about the ethics of AI, because that's an important factor as we move forward as well. Another question that's come in here, if I could just bring that one back, is around, are there any obvious links between the funding models that are currently the funding formula, and how does the police productivity review findings fit in with that? Have we got anything we can add on that?
Well, so we didn't examine the funding formula. It's been talked about for years, and I believe it's been again looked at by the current government. What we could say and should say and did say is there needs to be more consistency about how forces understand, number one, how they spend what they spend, and then particularly how that turns itself directly through a line into a positive outcome. Data was poor, and it still is, everybody, I'm afraid. Technology, again, has to be able to, as a key enabler, improve policing's accuracy with regard to storing and then using data nationally, which we recorded in and reported in report 1, but it's still relevant in report 2 and 3. So we didn't do funding formula, but better understanding of, one, how and what you spend your money on, and two, what your return is. It becomes a key theme through all 3 reports, David, to be honest.
And one more question before we go back to looking at some of the successes that you'd want to highlight is around, what's the conflation between performance and productivity? Because we have performance reviews, and we obviously the way the HMIC report, and where does the gap? They're totally interlinked, but how do you separate them when you're talking about these sort of subjects?
Yeah, again, great question. So I think probably the most important element to separate them out is cost. So I can deliver performance, and no doubt people may say I did deliver performance in a positive or negative way, but nobody really asked the questions about how much did that cost me. So that's the difference. The main difference from a productivity point of view is you absolutely understand from the beginning how much resource, time, effort, or finance you put into the effort, and the outcome is directly then linked to that input. So, you can argue forces, individual groups can be very effective, but are they being very efficient at the same time, is the burning question that takes you down the productivity route.
And it's that combination that we need to make a professional judgment on, isn't it? It's how we get that value out of it. So perhaps you could tell us about some of the successes to date.
So I'm very pleased. As I said before, I've been around a long time, and I've seen many reviews come out that are very, very good and very successful, but we were very concerned about them being a document that's read, stays on the shelf, and then is not implemented. So there were at least 3 things that were being implemented while we were still working on the review, and those are 2 of our key successes. One was the mental health piece of work we did alongside policing, alongside Rachel Bacon as the national lead, and forces around right care, right person. And that key success is already bearing evidence and fruit, where officers are getting time back to do policing rather than babysit, if that's the right terminology, somebody who's simply waiting outside A&E to be seen. A national partnership agreement signed by ministers, which pretty much says that 11 or 12 hours that officers were waiting in cars when there is no more responsibility or need for that officer is now supposed to be 1 hour as per that national agreement. Just one key, I think, tangible, really pragmatic feeling of success from the review. The second one was Home Office counting rules. Again, 50, 60, 70,000 hours of time just in some small forces back into policing, where bureaucracy and duplication was removed. It hasn't in any way, shape or form diminished the service that the victim gets, but it has taken away some of that. And the third one, and maybe the most exciting going forward, particularly relevant today, is how technology was being used and continues to be used to improve performance. And I've mentioned things like auto redaction tools already. There are many more, David, but I'm conscious of time. So they were probably just three that I would draw out as a headline so far.
And you've mentioned this already, that given the challenge we face, can policing improve productivity even further?
Yes, 100%. And I think there's a guide called the 26 plus the final recommendations in report 2 and report 3. If they are turned into an implementation plan, even on the most simple basic level of a spreadsheet across policing, and then how are the 43 forces doing against these recommendations, which I repeat were all accepted by previous government, then if they're implemented over a 5-year period, which is what we said, productivity will improve across policing. The risk is it becomes seen as short term in some people's views, and therefore it was there and now it's something else. Let's move on to something more important. This is at the core of policing. If you get this right and you change the culture so that productivity remains as a driving element of everything policing does, then and only then, I believe, will the public get the very, very best service it can get from policing. There's great work going on out there, but senior leaders have a responsibility to manage the budget, manage the resources in the most efficient and effective way, and use technology as a key enabler to deliver, in my humble view, against the recommendations that and they were, I had the pleasure of leading them with Steve House. What a fantastic team, and their great work shouldn't go. I hope shouldn't disappear in any hole as we move on.
There's a couple more questions I'll just pop to you, and then we'll cover how people can start to find out the information. But Andrew's asking about how does this work link into the College of Policing Centre for Productivity and the cashflow savings around procurement and shared services that the Home Secretary's been talking about?
Yeah, so thanks, Andrew. Great question. So the report 1 directly led to the creation by government and others of the new to be formed Centre of Police and Productivity. So our report and our findings led to the creation of. We are in transition, as you would expect us to be, for the last 6 months working with the college. So they have got all of our reports, not the final one because we haven't written that yet. And we've worked really closely and will continue to work very closely until our last day with Andy Marsh to ensure that the continuity of all of our work and findings is, I hope, continued, and I'm sure it will be successfully by Andy and his team at the college.
There's a question from Michael, and I'm sure colleagues in the business engagement team, BDS, could have written this as well. Not wanting to restrict innovation, how do UK police better access the core technologies for common use, given that the common good data and ethical standards, rather than going into long alone? There's a lot of times we find innovation we haven't thought it through, perhaps as wide as we could.
Yeah, I think what policing, and again, I look at myself historically, what policing has to do, it has to be brave. If you only innovate the ideas that are doomed to success, then you won't be creative. You've got to be big, you've got to be brave, and you've got to be bold, and you have to accept that some of these things will fail. But the productivity element of that is spot them failing quickly and stop them. Don't carry on and on and on and on when you know they're not going anywhere. Dyson Hoover didn't get that super duper thing right first time, I'm sure. So therefore, you've got to be big, you've got to take risks, and senior leaders have to have a culture whereby failure happens every now and then.
That's fantastic. And I think it's important we perhaps bring the slide on now that talks about how you can find information. But how do people find out more information if you're in a force, particularly around the first phase report?
So 3 main areas. Number 1 is on the government website, report number 1. So innovate the report, productivity report number 1 is there. Report number 2 is with every chief constable. So I'm sure they will willingly share it with anybody within their force area, as well as, by the way, being with the Home Office and the Police and Minister. And report 3 and a closing report. We will be doing a public facing closing report, and report 3 will go to the Minister and the Home Secretary, and I'm sure that will end its way equally with all forces and chief constables in due course. Between now and the end of September, I've got a fantastic comms team. Gemma is online, so you can speak to Gemma about anything in due course. And after that, it will be the unit that's been mentioned at the College of Policing around the Centre of Policing Productivity.
And the QR code and the short link which created on there, that takes you right to the heart of the Gov website where this information is. And we'll paste that in the chat as well. And of course, you can join us again next week on the 18th of September, where we'll hear more on the recommendations from the policing productivity and how forces can approach that implementation, which is really important. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today. There's a little bit more housekeeping and wrap up as we come towards the end of the half-hour session that we have. We are going to be out and about next week with the policing stage and the tech stage at the Emergency Services and the Emergency Technology Show. Colleagues from the Police Digital Service who are on this call right now will be there on Wednesday and Thursday. In fact, we'll be doing next Wednesday's webinar from the venue there. So putting the technology mobile capability on test for that. So please join us. The recording of this webinar and obviously next week's webinar will be on the PDS YouTube channel for you to be able to access, and we'll share that with the Productivity Review, who will be sending that out again, alongside the over 100 other Wednesday webinars we've got on there, which cover everything from domestic abuse to using technology and booking meetings, etc. So there's an awful lot you can actually do to get that good. Please give us your feedback on webinars as well. That we'll put the QR code on the screen for those as well, if you've got something to share. And there's a quick list of what's coming up in the next few weeks. And again, the range of subjects we do. Just announced the one at the end of September is going to be around bookings and forms, which is a fantastic way of improving productivity by managing meetings. It might sound like a small thing, but when you multiply that across policing, there's a huge potential to that. Alan, thank you and the wider team for joining us today. We've had a fantastic Wednesday webinar and thank you part of it. I want to thank you all for joining us this week and hope you can join us over the next couple of weeks where we'll go into more detail about the Policing Productivity Review. Thanks, Alan.
Our pleasure. 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 Our pleasure.